Hi everyone, this is Glenda Ganzon and welcome to my Human Anatomy and Physiology class. And for today's video, I'm going to be discussing the functions of the nervous tissue. So stay tuned. Having learned the components of nervous tissue and the basic anatomy of the nervous system, next comes an understanding of how nervous tissue is capable of communicating within the nervous system. Imagine yourself that you're about to take a shower in the morning before going to school or doing something, or before going out to do something. You have turned on the faucet to start the water as you prepare to get in the shower, and after a few minutes you expect the water to be a temperature that will be comfortable to enter. So you put your hand out into the spray of water, and what happens next depends on how your nervous system interacts with the stimulus of the water temperature and what you do in response to that stimulus. So this is the possible path that you may follow. First is the sensory neuron has ending in the skin that sends a stimulus such as water temperature. So the strength of the signal that starts here is dependent on the strength of the stimulus. Number two, the graded potential from the sensory ending, if strong enough, will initiate an action potential at the initial segment of the axon, which is immediately adjacent to the sensory endings in the skin. And then number three, the axon of the peripheral sensory neuron enters the spinal cord and contacts another neuron in the gray matter. The contact is a synapse where another graded potential is caused by the release of chemical signal from the axon terminals. Number four, when an action potential is initiated in the initial segment of this neuron and travels up the sensory pathway to a region of the brain called thalamus, another synapse passes the information along the next neuron. And then number five, the sensory pathway ends when the signal reaches the cerebral cortex. In number six, after integration with the neurons in other part of the cerebral cortex, a motor command is sent from the precentral gyrus of the frontal cortex. And then number seven, the upper motor neuron sends an action potential down to the spinal cord. The target of the upper motor neuron is the dendrites of the lower motor neuron in the gray matter of the cord or of the spinal cord. And finally, in number 8, the axon of the lower motor neuron emerges from the spinal cord in a nerve and connects to a muscle through a neuromuscular junction to cause contraction of the target muscle. Found in the skin of your fingers or toes is a type of sensory receptor that sensitive to temperature called thermoreceptor. So when you place your hand under the shower, the cell membrane of the thermoreceptor changes its electrical state, or this is what we call as voltage. And the amount of change is dependent on the strength of the stimulus, how hot the water is, and this is called a graded potential. So if the stimulus is strong, the voltage of the cell membrane will change enough to generate an electrical signal that will travel down the axon. You have learned about this type of signaling before with respect to the interaction of nerves and muscles at the neuromuscular junction. The voltage the voltage at which such a signal is generated is called the threshold, and the resulting electrical signal is called an action potential. In this example, the action potential travels a process known as propagation along the axon from the axon hillock to the axon terminals and into the synaptic end bulbs. So when this signal reaches the end bulbs, it causes the release of a signaling molecule, and that molecule is called a neurotransmitter. So the neurotransmitter diffuses across the short distance of the synapse and binds to a receptor protein of the target neuron. And when the molecular signal binds to the receptor, the cell membrane of target neuron changes its electrical state and a new graded potential begins. So if that graded potential is strong enough to reach threshold, the second neuron generates an action potential at its axon hillock. So target of this neuron is another neuron in the thalamus of the brain, the part of the CNS that acts as a relay for sensory information. At another synapse, neurotransmitter is released and binds to its receptor. The thalamus then sends the sensory information to the cerebral cortex, outermost layer of gray matter in the brain, where conscious reception of that water temperature begins. Within the cerebral cortex, information is processed among many neurons, integrating the stimulus of the water temperature with the other sensory stimuli. With your emotional state, just aren't ready to wake up, the bed is calling to you. Or memories, perhaps the lab notes you have to study before the quiz, and finally a plan is developed about what you do, whether that is to turn the temperature up, turn the whole shower off, or go back to bed or step into the shower. To do any of these things, the cerebral cortex has to send a command out to your body to move muscles. A region of the cortex is specialized for sending signals down to the spinal cord for movement. So the upper motor neuron in this region, called the precentral gyrus of the frontal cortex, which has an axon that extends all the way down to the spinal cord. At the level of the spinal cord at which this axon makes a synapse, a graded potential occurs in the cell membrane of the lower motor neuron, and this second motor neuron is responsible for causing muscle fibers to contract. In the manner described in my lecture about the muscle tissue, an action potential travels along the motor neuron axon into the periphery. The axon terminates on muscle fibers at the neuromuscular junction. So acetylcholine is released at the specialized synapse, which causes the muscle action potential to begin, following a large potential known as an end plate potential. So when the lower motor neuron excites the muscle fiber, it contracts, and all of this occurs in a fraction of a second, but this story is the basis of how the nervous system functions. So this ends my discussion about the functions of the nervous tissue. If you have any question, please write it in the comment section down below and I'll be glad to answer them all. And if you're still not subscribed to my channel, please also do consider subscribing and click the notification bell so that you'll be updated with my new videos. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share. Once again, I would like to thank you all for watching my video and for listening to my discussion. So until my next video, bye everyone!